The transport ship docked at Station Vila 7 with a soft hum of engines powering down. Maya Collins grabbed her small bag and stood up from her seat. Through the window, she could see the massive space station stretching out in all directions. Lights twinkled from thousands of windows. Ships of every shape and size moved around the docking bays like fish swimming in a vast ocean dot. She took a deep breath. This was it. The Galactic Union Academy, the most famous school in the known galaxy. And she was about to become one of its newest students. The airlock doors opened with a hiss, and Maya stepped out onto the station. The air smelled different here, clean and filtered, with a faint hint of something sweet she could not identify. The gravity felt lighter than Earth, and she had to be careful not to bounce with each step. A tall figure waited for her at the end of the boarding ramp. He had pale blue skin, 4 arms, and large dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore the silver robes of an academy instructor. "You must be Maya Collins," he said. His voice was smooth and calm. "I am Instructor Kelveth. I will be your guide today, and one of your teachers this semester." Maya nodded politely. "Thank you for meeting me, sir." Kelveth tilted his head slightly, studying her with obvious curiosity. "You are shorter than I expected." The file said humans were tall. "Some of us are," Maya replied with a small smile. "I'm about average for a human female." They walked together through the station's corridors. Maya noticed that other beings stopped and stared as she passed. Some whispered to each other. Others simply watched with wide eyes, as if they were looking at something dangerous. She was used to this by now. Humans had only joined the Galactic Union 15 years ago, when the first contact ships arrived on Earth. In that short time, humanity had gained a reputation throughout the galaxy, not as diplomats or scientists or artists, but as survivors of one of the most dangerous planets ever discovered. Earth was classified as a Category 7 Deathworld. Maya had learned what that meant during her preparation for this exchange program. It meant that her home planet had extreme gravity compared to most inhabited worlds. It meant that Earth weather could kill with storms, floods, and freezing temperatures. It meant that the ground itself could shake and split open without warning. It meant that the air was filled with oxygen, a gas that most species considered corrosive and toxic. And it meant that the creatures who evolved there, including humans, were seen as something between monsters and miracles. Kelvath led her to the Academy's main building. The halls were wide and filled with students of every shape and size. Maya saw beings with fur, scales, feathers, and skin of every color imaginable. Some walked on 2 legs like her. Others moved on 4, 6, or even more. A few floated through the air. Their bodies adapted for low-gravity environments. Every single one of them moved out of her way as she walked past. "Your dormitory is in the East Wing," Kelveth explained. "You will have a private room. We thought it best, given the special circumstances." Maya understood what he meant. No other species wanted to share a room with a human. They were afraid of her. "I have prepared the other students for your arrival," Kelveth continued. "I explained that humans are generally peaceful and that you have passed all the psychological evaluations required for this program. However, I cannot control their personal reactions. You may find that some of your classmates are cautious around you." "I understand," Maya said. "I'll do my best not to scare anyone." Kelvath made a sound that might have been a laugh. "That may be difficult. Your species has quite the reputation." They reached her dormitory room, and Kelvath handed her a small device that served as her key and communication tool. He explained the basic rules of the academy, the schedule for classes, and where to find food that was safe for human consumption. "One more thing," he said before leaving. "There is another human student at the academy. His name is Kyle Prescott. He arrived 2 semesters ago. I believe he would be happy to meet you." Maya thanked him and watched him walk away on his long, thin legs. Then she entered her room and sat down on the bed. It was firm and uncomfortable, clearly designed for a species with a very different body structure than hers. But she did not mind. She had slept in worse places during camping trips back on Earth. She unpacked her few belongings and looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, millions of light years away, was Earth, her family, her friends, everything she had ever known. But she had chosen to come here. She had worked hard for years to earn a spot in this exchange program. She wanted to learn about other cultures, to meet beings from distant worlds, to help build bridges between humanity and the rest of the galaxy, even if those beings were terrified of her. The next morning, Maya found her way to her first class. The room was large and filled with curved desks arranged in a half circle around the central platform where the instructor would stand. About 30 students were already seated when she arrived. The moment she walked through the door, silence fell over the room. Maya kept her expression calm and friendly. She walked slowly, making sure not to move too fast or too suddenly. She had learned during her training that quick movements made other species nervous. To them, human reflexes seemed almost supernaturally fast. She found an empty seat near the back of the room and sat down. The student next to her, a small creature covered in soft gray fur with large round eyes, immediately scooted his chair as far away as possible. Maya pretended not to notice. She pulled out her tablet and prepared for the lesson. A few minutes later, she felt someone watching her. She looked up and saw a human face across the room. A young man with light brown hair and a friendly expression. He gave her a small nod and a half smile. Kyle Prescott, she guessed. The other human. She nodded back, feeling a tiny bit of the tension leave her shoulders. At least she was not completely alone here. Instructor Calveth entered the room and began the lesson. It was a class on interstellar diplomacy, covering the history of first contact situations between different species. Maya listened carefully, taking notes on her tablet, but even as she focused on the lecture, she could feel the eyes of her classmates on her back, watching, waiting, wondering what the Deathworld girl might do. Maya ignored them and kept her attention on the instructor. She had come here to learn, to grow, and to prove that humans were more than just the monsters the galaxy believed them to be. She was determined to succeed, no matter how long it took. The classroom had gone completely silent. Every student sat frozen in their seat, watching as Torvik walked down the aisle toward Maya. His heavy footsteps were the only sound in the room. Instructor Calveth stood at the front of the class, his 4 hands raised in a gesture of calm. But his species had an instinctive response to sudden threats. When faced with danger, Sauravans froze. They could not help it. It was built into their biology. Torvik, Calveth said, his voice strained. I am ordering you to return to your seat immediately. Torvik ignored him. His yellow eyes were fixed on Maya with a burning intensity. On my world, he said, we settle disputes the old way, with honor, with blood. He reached down to his belt and drew something from a sheath hidden beneath his clothing. It was a knife. Not a simple blade, but a Crossian ceremonial weapon called a Vethkar. The blade was curved and serrated, designed to cut through thick hide and muscle. The metal gleamed under the classroom lights, polished to a mirror shine. Several students screamed. The Kethri sitting next to Maya made a high-pitched whimpering sound and collapsed sideways, fainting from pure terror. His small furry body slumped over his desk. Maya did not scream. She did not faint. She did not even stand up from her chair. She simply looked at Torvik and the knife in his hand. Then she smiled. It was not a nervous smile. It was not a forced smile meant to hide her fear. It was a calm, patient expression. The kind of smile someone might wear when they knew exactly what was going to happen next and found the whole situation slightly amusing. Torvik hesitated. Something about that smile made his instincts whisper warnings he did not understand. His species had survived for millions of years on a harsh world filled with predators. They had developed sharp senses for detecting threats. And right now, every one of those senses was telling him that something was wrong. But he had come too far to back down. His followers were watching. The entire class was watching. If he retreated now, he would be seen as weak. In Crossian society, weakness was worse than death. He raised the knife and lunged at Maya. What happened next took less than 2 seconds. Maya's right hand shot out and caught Torvik's wrist. Her grip was firm, but not crushing. She twisted his arm in a direction it was not meant to bend, and the knife fell from his suddenly nerveless fingers. Her left hand plucked the weapon out of the air before it could hit the floor. In the same smooth motion, she stood up from her chair, hooked her foot behind Torvik's ankle, and swept his legs out from under him. The massive Crossian crashed to the floor on his back, the impact knocking the wind out of his lungs. Before he could recover, Maya dropped down and planted her knee on his chest, pinning him to the ground. The whole sequence was so fast that most of the students did not even see it happen. One moment Torvik was charging at Maya with a knife. The next moment he was on the floor, helpless, staring up at the small human girl who had put him there. Maya looked down at him with that same calm smile. Then she glanced at the knife in her hand, turning it over to examine the craftsmanship. "Nice balance," she said casually. "Crossian smiths do good work." Torvik's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. His yellow eyes were wide with an emotion he had never felt before in his entire life. Pure, primal terror. He was not afraid of the knife. He was not afraid of pain or injury or even death. He was afraid of her, of how easily she had defeated him, of how calm she remained while doing it, of the realization that she could have done so much worse if she had wanted to. Maya stood up and stepped back from the fallen Crossian. She walked over to Instructor Kelvath, who was still frozen at the front of the room, and placed the knife on his desk with the handle facing toward him. "Sorry about the disruption," she said politely. "I'll go back to my seat now." She returned to her chair, stepping over Torvik's motionless body on the way, and sat down as if nothing had happened. She picked up her tablet and looked at her notes from before the interruption. The classroom remained silent for a long moment. Then Kelvath finally unfroze. He blinked several times as if waking up from a dream and reached for his communication device to call security. Torvik's followers rushed to help him up. The big Crossian's legs were shaking so badly that he could barely stand. He did not look at Maya. He could not bring himself to meet her eyes. Security officers arrived within minutes. They were a mix of species, all wearing the gray uniforms of station law enforcement. They looked at Torvik, then at Maya, then at the knife on Kelvath's desk. "What happened here?" the lead officer asked. Kelvath explained the situation in a voice that was still not entirely steady. The officers listened, took statements from several witnesses, and eventually led Torvik away. He did not resist. He walked between them with his head down, his earlier arrogance completely gone. After the security team left, Kelvath dismissed the class early. The students filed out of the room in silence, casting glances at Maya as they passed. Some looked at her with fear, others with something like awe. Kyle caught up with her in the corridor outside. "That was incredible," he said quietly. "Where did you learn to do that?" Maya shrugged. "My dad taught me some basic self-defense when I was a kid, and I took a few martial arts classes in high school. Nothing special." Kyle stared at her. "Nothing special? You just took down a Crossian warrior in 2 seconds flat with your bare hands." "He was slow," Maya said simply, "and he telegraphed his attack. Anyone could have seen it coming. Anyone human, maybe." Kyle shook his head in disbelief. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" The whole station is going to hear about this by tomorrow." Maya sighed. "I know. I was trying to avoid making a scene." "Well, it's too late for that now." Kyle paused. "Are you okay?" "I mean, really?" Maya considered the question. Her heart rate had returned to normal. Her hands were steady. She did not feel angry or scared or even particularly excited. She just felt tired. "I'm fine," she said. "I just want to go back to my room and rest." They walked together in silence for a while. Other students stepped out of their way, pressing themselves against the walls as Maya passed. The whispers that followed her were different now. Before, they had been filled with nervous fear. Now there was something else mixed in. Respect, wonder, and maybe a little bit of terror. Maya ignored them all. She had not come to this academy to prove how dangerous humans could be. She had come to learn, to grow, and to build bridges between her species and the rest of the galaxy. But sometimes, she thought, you had to show strength before anyone would listen to your words. She reached her dormitory room, closed the door behind her, and finally let out a long, slow breath. Then she sat down on her bed and stared at her hands. These same hands had just disarmed a trained warrior more than twice her size, and it had been easy. So terrifyingly easy. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Maya understood why the rest of the galaxy was so afraid of humans. 3 weeks passed at the Galactic Union Academy. Maya fell into a routine of classes, study sessions, and meals eaten alone in the corner of the dining hall. She learned to navigate the station's winding corridors without getting lost. She figured out which foods in the cafeteria were safe for humans and which ones would make her sick. She even started to recognize some of her classmates by name, though most of them still refused to speak to her directly. The isolation was hard, but Maya had expected it. She kept herself busy with schoolwork and spent her free time in the station's observation deck, watching ships come and go against the backdrop of endless stars. Kyle found her there one evening after classes. He sat down in the chair next to her without asking permission, which Maya appreciated. Most beings asked if it was safe to approach her first. "How are you holding up?" he asked. Maya shrugged. "It's not easy, but I knew it wouldn't be." Kyle nodded slowly. "It gets better. A little. The Kethri are the most nervous, but they warm up eventually. The Sorovans are actually pretty friendly once they realize you're not going to bite them. And the Vareshi think humans are fascinating. They keep asking me questions about Earth's predators." Maya smiled slightly. "What do you tell them?" "The truth. That we share our planet with animals that can crush us, poison us, eat us alive, and tear us apart. And that we keep some of them as pets." He grinned. "Their reactions are priceless." They talked for a while about their home planet, their families, and the strange experience of being the only humans in a station full of aliens. It felt good to speak English without having to slow down or simplify her words. It felt good to be around someone who understood. But not everyone at the academy was content to simply avoid Maya. Torvik was a Krasian, a member of a species known throughout the galaxy for their aggressive nature and strict social hierarchies. He was tall and heavily built, with thick green scales covering his body and a ridge of bone plates running from his forehead down to his neck. His eyes were yellow with vertical pupils, like a snake. His hands ended in sharp claws that clicked against surfaces when he walked. Maya had noticed him watching her during classes. He always sat with a group of other Krasians, speaking in low voices and glancing in her direction. She could not understand their language, but she could read body language well enough to know they were talking about her. One afternoon, Maya was walking through the corridor toward her dormitory when Torvik stepped into her path. His followers spread out behind him, blocking any easy escape route. "So this is the famous Deathworlder," Torvik said loudly. His translator device converted his words into standard galactic speech. but his tone was mocking and cold. The terrifying human that everyone is so afraid of. Maya stopped walking and looked up at him calmly. He was almost 2 feet taller than her, and his body was covered in natural armor. By any objective measure, he should have been the more intimidating one. "Can I help you with something?" she asked politely. Torvik laughed, and his followers joined in. "Help me? What could a soft little thing like you possibly help me with?" Maya said nothing. She simply waited. "I have been watching you, human," Torvik continued, stepping closer. "I have seen how everyone trembles when you walk past. I have heard the whispers about your dangerous planet and your dangerous species. But I do not see anything dangerous here. I see a small, weak creature with no claws, no fangs, no armor. I see prey pretending to be a predator." His followers hissed in agreement. Maya kept her expression neutral. "I'm not pretending to be anything. I'm just a student same as you." Torvik leaned down until his face was close to hers. His breath smelled like copper and something rotten. "On my world, we do not respect weakness. We do not fear creatures we can crush with one hand. Your reputation is a lie, human. And sooner or later, everyone will see the truth." He straightened up and walked past her, bumping her shoulder hard with his arm. His followers followed, some of them making sounds that she guessed were insults in their native language. Maya stood still for a moment, then continued walking to her room. Her heart was beating faster than normal, but her hands were steady. She had dealt with bullies before. She knew that reacting with anger or fear would only make things worse, but she also knew that Torvik was not going to stop. She had seen the look in his eyes. This was not just about her. This was about his pride, his status, his need to prove himself in front of his followers. Over the next few days, the harassment continued. Torvik would make comments about humans whenever Maya was within earshot. He would bump into her in the corridors and then blame her for getting in his way. He convinced other students to exclude her from group projects, forcing her to work alone. Kyle warned her to be careful. "Crassians take challenges to their dominance very seriously," he said. "If he thinks you're disrespecting him by not reacting, he might escalate. What am I supposed to do?" Maya asked. "Fight him? No, definitely not. If you hurt him, even in self-defense, the Academy might expel you. Humans are already on thin ice here. They're looking for any excuse to send us back." Maya sighed. "So I just have to take it?" Kyle did not have an answer for that. The tension reached its peak during a lecture on interspecies conflict resolution. Instructor Kelveth was explaining the historical peace treaty between the Soravan and the Kethri, a landmark agreement that had ended centuries of war between the two species. Maya was taking notes when she felt someone staring at her. She looked up and saw Torvik watching her from across the room. His yellow eyes were filled with something dark and hungry. Slowly, deliberately, he stood up from his seat. "I have a question, Instructor," he said. His voice was calm, but there was a sharpness beneath it that made the other students go quiet. Kelveth paused his lecture. "Yes, Torvik. Why do we allow Deathworlders in this academy?" Torvik asked. He turned to look directly at Maya. "They do not belong here. They are not like us. They come from a world of violence and death, and they bring that violence with them wherever they go." A murmur ran through the classroom. Some students nodded in agreement. Others looked uncomfortable. Kelveth raised his 4 hands in a calming gesture. "Torvik, this is not the appropriate place for this discussion. Please sit down." "No." Torvik stepped into the aisle between the desks. "I am tired of pretending. I am tired of watching everyone cower before this small, soft creature as if she were some kind of monster. She is not a monster. She is nothing." He began walking toward Maya's seat, his claws clicking against the floor with each step. "Today," he said, his voice echoing through the silent room. "I am going to prove it." Maya watched him approach. Her body remained relaxed, her breathing steady. But somewhere deep inside her, ancient instincts were waking up. Instincts that had kept her ancestors alive on one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. The Deathworld girl did not move. She simply waited for what was coming next. News of the incident spread through the station like fire through dry grass. By the next morning, everyone on Velar 7 seemed to know what had happened. The story grew with each telling. Some versions claimed that Maya had broken every bone in Torvik's body. Others said she had moved so fast that she was invisible to the naked eye. A few creative retellings even described her eyes glowing red as she attacked. Maya stayed in her room for most of the day, avoiding the attention. She only left to get food from the cafeteria, and even then, the experience was strange and uncomfortable. Students who had ignored her before now stared openly. Some moved away when she approached, their fear more intense than ever. But others watched her with a different expression: curiosity, interest, even admiration. The academy administration called her in for a meeting that afternoon. She expected to be punished, maybe even expelled. Instead, the officials simply asked her to describe what had happened. They had already reviewed the security footage and interviewed multiple witnesses. The evidence was clear. Torvik had drawn a weapon and attacked an unarmed student. Maya had defended herself using minimal force. She had not caused any serious injury. "You showed remarkable restraint," the head administrator said. He was a Valori, a species with smooth gray skin and no visible eyes. Most beings, when attacked with a blade, would have responded with lethal force. Maya shook her head. "I never wanted to hurt him. I just wanted him to stop." The administrator made a sound that might have been approval. "Torvik has been suspended pending a full disciplinary review. His actions were unacceptable by any standard. However, we must ask you to be careful in the coming days. This incident has attracted significant attention. There may be others who wish to test you." Maya understood what he meant. "I'll do my best to avoid confrontation." That evening, she found Kyle waiting for her outside her dormitory. He had 2 containers of food from the cafeteria, both filled with items safe for human consumption. "Thought you might want to eat somewhere private," he said. "The dining hall is a circus right now." They went to the observation deck, which was empty at this hour. The stars wheeled slowly past the windows as the station completed its endless orbit. They sat on the floor with their backs against the wall and ate in comfortable silence. "You're famous now," Kyle said eventually. "The Kethri students are calling you a demon from the void. The Sorvans think you must be some kind of special forces soldier. And the Vareshi want to know if all humans can do what you did." Maya picked at her food. "What do you tell them?" Kyle's expression became serious. "That's the thing, isn't it? That's what they don't understand." He set down his container and turned to face her. "The Kethri think you're a demon because they can't imagine any normal being moving that fast. The Sorvans assume you must be a trained killer because only their elite warriors have that kind of skill. They don't realize the truth, which is that what you did was basic. That back on Earth, millions of humans learn those same techniques. Kids take martial arts classes after school. People practice self-defense on weekends. Old ladies in retirement homes know how to throw someone to the ground." Kyle leaned back against the wall. "You're not special, Maya. I mean, you are. But not in the way they think. The scary thing isn't that you can do it. The scary thing is that any human can." Maya stared out at the stars. She thought about her father teaching her how to throw a punch when she was 8 years old. She thought about the self-defense class she took in high school after a friend was mugged. She thought about all the ordinary people back home who knew how to protect themselves. who would learn to fight because Earth was a world where fighting was sometimes necessary. Is that why they're afraid of us? She asked quietly. Because we're all like this. Kyle nodded slowly. Think about it from their perspective. Most species evolved on worlds where the environment was harsh, but the other creatures were manageable. They developed technology before they developed combat skills. They built walls and weapons and defenses. They never needed to learn how to fight with their bare hands. He paused, gathering his thoughts. But humans evolved on Earth, a planet where everything was trying to kill us all the time. The weather, the terrain, the animals, even each other. We didn't have claws or fangs or armor or venom. We had to survive using nothing but our bodies and our minds. We became persistence hunters, chasing prey for hours until they collapsed from exhaustion. We learned to read expressions and body language so we could tell friend from enemy. We developed reflexes fast enough to dodge attacks from predators twice our size. Kyle spread his hands. And then we kept those skills, even after we didn't need them anymore. We turned them into sports, into games, into art. We practice fighting for fun. We push our bodies to the limit just to see how far they can go. To the rest of the galaxy, that's insane. Maya was quiet for a long moment. She had never thought about it that way before. On Earth, martial arts and combat sports were normal. Everyone knew someone who boxed or wrestled or trained in some kind of fighting style. It was just part of being human. But out here, among species who had never needed to develop those skills, it made humans seem like something from a nightmare. So what do we do? She asked. How do we convince them that we're not monsters? Kyle did not answer right away. He looked out at the stars, his expression thoughtful. I don't know if we can convince all of them, he said finally. Some species will always be afraid of us. That fear is too deep, too primal. But maybe we can convince some. Maybe we can show them that being dangerous doesn't mean being evil. That having the ability to hurt someone doesn't mean we will. He turned to look at Maya with a small smile. You did that today, you know. You could have broken Torvik's arm. You could have crushed his throat. You could have killed him before anyone even realized what was happening. But you didn't. You stopped him, you disarmed him, and then you let him go. That means something. Maya thought about the moment when she had pinned Torvik to the ground. She remembered looking down at his terrified face and feeling nothing but a vague sense of disappointment. Not anger, not satisfaction, just sadness that it had come to this. I didn't want to hurt him, she said, even after everything he did. I just wanted him to understand. Kyle nodded. And maybe, eventually, he will. Maybe they all will. He picked up his food container again. Until then, we just have to keep being ourselves. Keep showing them that humans are more than just Deathworlders. That we're capable of kindness and patience and restraint, not just violence. Maya smiled slightly. It was not much of a plan, but it was something. They sat together in the observation deck until late into the night, watching the stars and talking about Earth and family and the strange path that had brought them both so far from home. And for the first time since arriving at the academy, Maya felt like she might actually belong here after all. The days following the incident brought changes that Maya had not expected. Some students still avoided her, pressing themselves against walls when she walked past and refusing to meet her eyes. But others began to approach her with cautious curiosity, like children reaching out to touch something they had always been told was dangerous. The first was Ren, the small Kethri student who had fainted beside her during the confrontation. He found her in the library 3 days after the incident, his large round eyes blinking nervously as he approached her table. I wanted to apologize, he said, his translator rendering his words in a soft, hesitant voice. For my reaction in the classroom. It was disrespectful. Maya looked up from her studies and smiled gently. You don't need to apologize. You were scared. That's a natural response. Ren shifted his weight from one foot to another. I have been scared of humans since I was young. My parents told me stories about your world, about the creatures that live there, about the things your people have done. He paused. But I have been thinking. You were attacked with a knife, and you could have killed the one who attacked you. But you did not. Why? Maya considered the question carefully. Because hurting him would not have solved anything. It would have just proven that humans are as violent as everyone believes. I wanted to show that we can be better than that. Ren was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. I think I understand. May I sit with you? I am studying for the same exam, and I do not understand the material very well. Maya gestured to the empty chair across from her. Of course. They studied together for several hours. Ren was nervous at first, flinching every time Maya moved too quickly or spoke too loudly. But gradually, he began to relax. By the end of the session, he was asking questions freely and even laughing at a joke Maya made about their instructor's forearm gestures. It was a small thing, but it felt like progress. Over the following weeks, more students began to approach Maya. Some came with questions about Earth and its dangerous ecosystem. Others wanted to know about human culture, their history, their strange persistence in surviving against impossible odds. A few even asked if she would teach them the techniques she had used against Torvik. Maya agreed to give informal lessons in basic self-defense. She kept the sessions small and focused on simple concepts like balance, awareness, and how to escape from common holds. She made sure to emphasize that these skills were meant for protection, not for starting fights. The classes became surprisingly popular. Students who had never spoken to Maya before now greeted her in the corridors. Species that had always seemed cold and distant started to show genuine interest in human culture and history. Even some of the Crassians changed their attitude. Torvik had been expelled from the academy and sent back to his homeworld in disgrace. But his former followers did not continue his crusade against humans. Instead, they kept their distance, treating Maya with a grudging respect that she interpreted as a recognition of her strength. One morning, Instructor Kelvath called Maya into his office. She walked through the familiar corridors, wondering what the meeting was about. She had not broken any rules or caused any problems since the incident. She could not imagine what he wanted to discuss. Kelvath's office was large and filled with artifacts from dozens of different worlds. The Sorvan instructor sat behind his desk, his four hands folded in front of him. His dark eyes studied Maya as she entered and took a seat. I have been an educator for over 40 cycles, he said. I have taught students from worlds of ice and worlds of fire. I have seen predators and prey sit side by side in my classroom. But I have never encountered anything quite like you. Maya was not sure how to respond. I'm just trying to fit in, sir. Kelvath made a sound that might have been amusement. You are failing spectacularly at that. But perhaps that is not a bad thing. He leaned forward slightly. I have watched you these past weeks. I have seen how you treat the other students, how you help those who are struggling, how you teach them skills that could save their lives without ever making them feel weak or inferior. He paused, his expression thoughtful. When Torvik attacked you, you could have killed him. We both know that. Your species is capable of violence that would terrify most beings in this galaxy. But you chose restraint. You chose mercy? Why? Maya thought about the question for a long moment before answering. Because that's not who I want to be, she said finally. Humans have done a lot of things we're not proud of. We've fought wars over land and resources and ideas. We've hurt each other and destroyed our own environment. We've made terrible mistakes. She met Kelvath's eyes steadily. But we've also learned from those mistakes. We've grown. We found ways to work together, to build instead of destroy, to protect instead of harm. I came to this academy to learn about other cultures and to show that humans can be more than just survivors of a death world. We can be partners, friends, allies. Calveth was silent for a long time. Then he slowly nodded, all four of his hands unclenching from their tightly folded position. Perhaps the Galactic Union has underestimated your species, he said. Not because of your strength or your reflexes or your ability to survive on a world that should have killed you, but because of your capacity for choice, for growth, for change. Maya smiled. It was the first time anyone on this station had described humans in terms that did not involve fear or violence. That's all any of us can ask for, she said. The chance to choose who we become. She left Calveth's office and walked back toward her dormitory. The corridors were busy with students moving between classes. Some still stepped aside when they saw her coming, but others nodded in greeting. A few even smiled as she passed a group of first-year students gathered near a window. She heard them whispering to each other. They were a mix of species, young beings from across the galaxy who had come to the academy to learn and grow. Just like her, they looked up at her with wide eyes. But for the first time, Maya did not see fear in their expressions. She saw curiosity, wonder, and maybe even hope. She smiled at them and kept walking. The future would not be easy. There would always be those who feared humans, who saw them as monsters from a world of death and violence. But there would also be those who were willing to look past that fear, who were willing to see humans as they truly were. Not perfect, not harmless, but capable of becoming something better. Maya stepped out onto the observation deck and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, her home, the death world that had shaped her, species into something the galaxy had never seen before. She was proud of where she came from, proud of the strength and resilience that flowed through her veins. But she was even prouder of the choice she made every single day. The choice to be kind, the choice to be patient, the choice to reach out with an open hand instead of a closed fist. That was what it meant to be human. Not the violence, not the fear, but the ability to choose. And Maya intended to keep making that choice for as long as she lived.